Hey everyone, it's me, Shannon, and this is part 5 of Was I in a Cult? Okay, quick recap. I left off where a pastor, director of the youth ministry, thought it was okay to take a minor with him to church without her parents' permission. Mind you, this was after said pastor actually harbored a runaway instead of turning her in to the police when her parents were looking for her, but yet chose to let her come to their house and hang out with his niece because I was in a safe place, according to him. Now, don't get me wrong, I was not innocent. As a 16-year-old child, I thought this was the coolest thing ever because I wanted to do what I wanted to do. But as a 16-year-old, I was clueless to the things that I could get involved in because I was naive. I was only 16 years old. I hadn't lived life. It was my first time running away. But as an adult now, when I look back at this, it repulses me because how dare a man of God think that it's okay to harbor a runaway? He could have at least said, "I'm sorry, you can't stay here, and if you do, I'm gonna be forced to call authorities, or you can't do this." Basically, he enabled me to be on the run even longer, and so that is appalling to me as an adult, knowing that a youth pastor would do such a thing. Now, if I was to talk to someone in the church about this now, I'm pretty sure they would say, like, well, he was just watching over you, and, he probably felt that it was God's will that he help you, and, he thought that taking you to church would be in your best interest. Honestly, I wouldn't doubt if I get comments in this section that say something to the effect of, well, at least he didn't leave you out on the streets. I needed to be left out on the streets. I needed to know the harsh realities that you don't just get to do whatever you want as a teenager. You don't get to just go and have a place to live rent free. Like, I needed to learn the hard way that I should have been back home instead of running amok in the streets. Maybe if I didn't have youth pastors enabling me to stay on the run, I wouldn't have stayed on the run for as long as I did. This is actually the first time I'm looking at this in this way, because for the longest time I was just like so grateful that this man of God would help me and take me in off the street and help me. I mean, he didn't let me stay there, like I wasn't living there or anything, but the fact that, sometimes I didn't have anywhere to go and I could just go over to their house was just like a refuge for me. And I don't know, I guess there's a lot that you can look into. You can think of it as that, it was better that I was kept safe, but honestly, he was allowing me to be put in danger a lot longer than I needed to be, because had I had understood the dangers of living on the streets earlier, then maybe I would have thought that maybe I should go back home where I actually belong. I'm just really lucky that this pastor happened to be a pretty good guy. I mean, I do remember, like, seeing some things, but, he had a girlfriend, and I remember they would go in the room and have the door closed, and I remember, I looked back at that years later. At the time, I thought no big deal of it, because obviously that was just the way things went in general life, right? But later on in life, I looked back at that, and in that church, we were taught that, you shouldn't even be with a girl without having other leaders and present with you. Like, you should only go out on dates with a chaperone. You should never have someone there, and you definitely shouldn't have them there in your room with the door closed. So this pastor was not following that supposed like unspoken rule, but it's like sort of like taught to you by leadership as you go along in the church. Anyways, that's beside the point. The point is that he never did anything to me, thank God. And I will say that, at least that didn't happen. But I could have been put in a situation where that could have easily happened. And that's why I think so many people within the church like go through something like this. They go through situations where they are taken advantage of by leadership or pastors, and I know of youth that have actually had that happen to them, and it's sad because people are placed in a place of leadership and they're looked up to and they're respected and they're trusted in that place, and they take advantage. But honestly, thank God I didn't get taken advantage of in that way. Moving on. Okay, so after that, it was like I was still living at home. I was 16. So between the ages of 16 and 18, let's just talk about that real quick. I just went back home. I went back to school, and I just lived my life basically. And I do remember that a lot of times I would run into people from the church. I would run into I seem to constantly run into these people from this church that were giving me flyers and inviting me to this church. And it was kind of strange because it was like, why is it that wherever I go, this church is present? Maybe because they use their men's and women's home that they call rehab homes, or they did at one point in time. I don't know what they call them now. But they send those men and women out into the streets on a daily basis to pass out flyers and invite people to their church, which is basically like they have a free marketing and sales team that go out and invite people and promote the church. And they drop them off, they take them in these vans, and they would drop them off in shopping centers. And then these men and women that were in these rehab homes or whatever would go around the parking lot and put flyers on all the cars, or they would go door to door from house to house, knocking on the doors and inviting people to church. This radical style of evangelism that they always refer to as something that was obviously biblical to them, and they took scriptures about evangelism and made that as like they should go out on the streets and into these neighborhoods, and they would actually go into like the worst of the worst neighborhoods to find people in the worst conditions possible to invite them, and because that's what their vision was. Okay, so they would go out, and that was their idea of rehabilitation. So it's kind of funny in a sense when I look back to it, because I'm like, okay, so this is totally taking advantage. They get a bunch of these guys and girls to live together in a communal home, and they're just going to use them to grow their church, basically. And instead of helping them overcome their issues and their addictions and whatever it is that they're there for in the first place, they're going to use them instead to market the church and basically try to close the deal and get people to come to church. I'm laughing because it's like now I'm seeing it from a whole different perspective. And now I know why I kept running into that particular ministry, because they were out in the streets witnessing all the time. And I was always in those areas where they were going, because I was, again, running around with the wrong crowd. And I'm about to run out of time. I'm at like 6 seconds. So I'm going to have to let you go. Talk to you later.